some of the more modern varieties that you might find in your supermarkets and so on. Some of them may have very specific adaptations to places or particular soil conditions that varieties that have been developed for kind of a mass market may not have those specific adaptations. But there's also just a lot of history behind these varieties and a lot of resonance for communities and families. And carrying these histories forward with the varieties and carrying these stories forward with the stewardship of the seeds has become something that we have come to realize is as important as saving the seeds itself. So I'm going to share some heirloom seed stories from our seed collection with you today. The first variety that I'm going to talk about is Aunt May's Bib Lettuce. And that is a lettuce that we offer in our catalog because when we were doing trials on our lettuce varieties, this one really stood out as one that had great taste. So we besides preserving it in our collection, have also moved it into our catalog. And the images here also highlight our evaluation program. These are scans and field photos that we take of varieties to document what they look like. And we also do taste evaluation. And so those are that's part of the narrative of the variety that we then share with our members. If it gets in the catalog, then we're sharing it with the general public. But then we're also wanting to research, what's the background of this Aunt May's Bib Lettuce? We know that it tastes great. We know that it's named Aunt May. What else can we learn about it? So with this one, it came to us in 1995 from a member named Kelly Eaton in Pennsylvania. And he had recently acquired the variety. Kelly Eaton was a listed member of Seed Savers Exchange, was a seed collector. And a lot of times we would get varieties from our members where they had kind of sleuthed out an heirloom variety, in their neighborhood or in their area. So this is a variety that Kelly had heard about. He heard that there was a barber in this small town called Boalsburg, Pennsylvania, that handed out lettuce seed to all his customers. And so he's like, wow, I gotta check this out. So I don't know if he actually went and got a haircut or if he just stopped by and asked for the lettuce seed. But sure enough, he found out that it was true. He got the variety from Nestor Keene, who was a barber in Boalsburg. Nestor and his wife Amber were the stewards of this variety. And they had been growing the variety since 1937 themselves. And Nestor got the variety from his Aunt May Smith, who lived in Millheim, Pennsylvania. And that's why it's called Aunt May. They always called it Aunt May's lettuce because that's who they got it from. Aunt May was a big fan of the lettuce and really liked it for its taste and also its hardiness, how well it would do. And it's very crisp and crunchy, has a really deep midrib on that lettuce. And also just has a really nice, sweet, buttery flavor. It's like what you want a good butterhead lettuce to taste like. And she got the seed from a family in her area that Nestor only knew the last name of, the Zimmerman family, who had grown it for decades before Aunt May got it in the Brush Valley in the area around Millheim, Pennsylvania. So that's as far back as we've been able to take that variety. But what was interesting is that Nestor ran a barbershop his entire adult life and really liked the lettuce and found that it seemed to work to send his barbershop customers home with a packet of lettuce seeds because they were always saving way more lettuce seeds than they needed or wanted for their own garden. So he would just have a jar of his lettuce seed and he would pour out a little sample into an envelope package for customers and send them home with it so that they could grow some really fantastic tasting lettuce that they weren't going to be able to find in any stores anywhere. And he did that his entire career. His son Robert took over the barbershop from him, and he continued to supply Robert with his seeds. So even after Nestor had retired, they were still sending customers home with the seeds of this great lettuce variety. So that's a story that we found out about fairly recently, even though we have the variety in our collection since '95. None of that detail had been part of the initial donation, but through correspondence and speaking and emailing back and forth with Kelly Eaton, we were able to get in touch with Robert Keene, who's Nestor and Amber's son, and we were able to, even though Nestor and Amber had by that time passed away, we were still able to gather these stories about the variety through their son Robert. This next one is an heirloom variety called the Phoebe Vincent lima bean. It's a very dark colored lima with stripes and purple speckles spots on it. It is actually very similar in what it looks like in its growth habit to a very old variety called Jackson Wonder. And I'm very curious, I'm hoping that someday we can do some genetic testing, because I think that there's a possibility that this might have originated as Jackson Wonder, and but then been home saved for so many generations that they lost track of the fact that it had been that variety originally. But it's hard to know for sure. It could just be a variety that looks very much like that historic lima. Jackson Wonder was kind of the first lima bean that was offered in 19th century catalogs that was advertised as being well adapted for northern gardeners. Lima beans tend to be long season, and for northern growers that is sometimes an issue for growing them out. Phoebe Vincent sent us the seed for this in 1987, and I'm going to read to you the letter. It's on there, but it's hard to read, that she sent at that time, back in '87. Dear sirs, I'm sending some of the brown lima beans that are descended from some my mother used to raise, and gave me some seed when I married and left home. I've raised them some years, but not every year, as the family seem to prefer other kinds. I have found that they outbear the white limas I have had. As my family does not raise their beans and such, I hate to see them just lapse away. I am 87 years old, in 88 on July 2nd, so I can't expect too many more years. My mother came from a German mixed with French family. I do not know if the families come from there, but Mama was careful to raise some. Respectfully, Phoebe Vincent. So when our seed historian was hired in 2011, this is one of those letters that we had on file that she found. She wanted to find out more information about Phoebe and about the history behind the variety. And so first started to look into whether Phoebe Vincent might still be around. The letter, from 1987 suggested she was 87. We weren't terribly optimistic that she might still be living. And sure enough, our seed historian Sarah found her gravesite on the Find a Grave genealogical website. So we knew that she had passed away. But she figured out that the photographer who had placed Phoebe Vincent's grave on this genealogical website, she had a hunch that that person might be related to Phoebe Vincent, so she contacted that person through that website. And sure enough, it was a great-granddaughter of Phoebe Vincent who had posted that photo, a woman named Jennifer, and through Jennifer then put us in touch with a woman named Sandra, who was Phoebe's granddaughter. And Sandra shared with us several letters and pictures, and also was able to tell us more about the variety. And then eventually we got in touch with Sandra's mother, who was Phoebe Vincent's daughter, and we were able to get even more information from that. This is on your left there is Phoebe Vincent with her husband Jesse when they were newlyweds in 1919. And then this is Phoebe Vincent's mother, Mary Dixon, in 1889. And Phoebe's mother gave her these lima bean seeds as a wedding present. This was not uncommon in the 1800s, early 1900s, for mothers to pass down seeds to their daughters when they got married. It was a part of saying you are an adult now. You need to provide for your family now. And Mary specifically told Phoebe, as long as you have these, your family will never go hungry. And so keep these and keep it going. And what was really interesting in this particular case was that Mrs. Phoebe herself, this is about the same time that she sent us a letter in 1987. What was fascinating about this story was the multi-generations of women that we talked to in Phoebe's family, and their responses to finding out that we had this bean, and the memories that they shared about it in their family. I think it was a very telling portrait of a kind of American life in the 20th century kind of overall. Phoebe's daughter talked a lot with us about how she tried to raise the beans, but she had moved to Arizona, and it seemed like the bean didn't do as well there as it had in Nebraska. And that she was a single mom and a working mother, and she just felt like she didn't have time for it either. And she felt like she was not measuring up, to her mom. Her mom raised a very large garden, grew almost all of their own food, kept very detailed calendars with harvest notes and noting the weather, noting yields, just all these observations that observant gardeners make and record. And her daughter just felt like she didn't, that she was falling short, and that she was trying to raise a family and she just couldn't do it in the same way that her mother had, and felt a lot of guilt over this being, and the fact that she wasn't stewarding it. But then her granddaughter and her great-granddaughter, they came at it from a little bit different perspective. Instead of feeling guilt about it, they just sort of felt more excited about finding this connection. Her Phoebe Vincent's granddaughter, Sandra, in particular, wanted to make sure that we sent her some seeds so that she could renew her family's stewardship. So that was one result of us gathering together the history behind this variety. Is that then we were also able to restore this variety to the family, and now Sandra is growing, her grandmother's lima bean again. So it's back with the family that it came from, and she's very excited about gardening, and excited about growing this lima bean. And these things kind of come back around us sometimes. But I think that story in particular is really illustrates, I think, something that is very common generationally and that unfolded in the 20th century in the United States, where sort of the baby boomer generation, a lot of people in that generation did not live the same lifestyle that their parents did. And a lot of people in that generation, for various reasons, moved away from living on farms, from growing their own food, from stewarding heirloom varieties in their family. In my own family, my grandmother was given some tomato seeds from her mother, very similar to how Phoebe received her lima beans as a wedding present. And my grandmother just stopped stewarding that seed in the 1950s and 60s, not because she wasn't gardening, but because she decided she liked big boy tomatoes better. It's just something I'm not too excited about that she did that. I wish we still had that in our family, but the things were changing very fast. The lifestyles were changing very fast, and that led to a lot of these heirloom varieties becoming endangered. But I think that it seems like we've turned a corner on that, and that these days more and more people are basically coming back to these varieties, coming back to these traditions, and realizing that they have a lot of value and trying to keep it going. Another interesting story is in our collection is about a rutabaga. Rutabaga is a biennials, and therefore not always the easiest for home stewards to steward. You have to be pretty intentional about it. This particular variety had actually came to us as a turnip, as many rutabagas do. There's a lot